Welcome to the Best Music Podcast with Dan Spencer, where we talk about music and the methods for making music with top performers in the music industry. I am your host, Dan, and this week's featured guest is Amani Roberts, aka DJ AmRo. So as well as performing around the world, Amani has co-released 3 remix EPs and runs a successful music business that caters to corporate clients. He's also an adjunct professor at California State University, where he teaches entertainment money management and is the co-director of the Center for Entertainment and Hospitality Management. Amani hosts and produces the Amani Experience Podcast. Check it out, folks, and has been featured on Yahoo, Finance, and MPI. Listen, if you're going to put an exclamation point after the word Yahoo, I'm going to say it like that. That's just how we go. You can find Amani on all social media platforms with the handle at Amani Experience. That's AmaniExperience. His new book, DJs Mean Business, is out everywhere books are sold. Amani, thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you very much for having me. Excited to be here.
Quick question for you to start us off. What's a piece of music you heard in the past couple days that really stood out to you?
Oh, that's interesting. I like Her's new album. And so, of course, you got the song Damage with the Janet Jackson sample. That continues to stick out in my mind. I really like that one.
Yo, for real, on a musical level, she's bringing it back, man. Like, talk about chops and just musicality coming out of that woman's pores. It's a beautiful thing to behold when she's making music.
Yeah, absolutely. Playing all the instruments. I just love it. She's a throwback.
Ain't she just? So I got a quick question for you. How do you stay up to speed on modern genres, music trends, and songs? Because as a DJ, you've got to know what the quote-unquote kids are into. You also need to be well-versed in music history for pretty much all of popular music, going back to the 40s, maybe even the 30s at this point. How do you stay abreast of what's going on?
I think it's a combination of using the resources we have, like Spotify. They have certain playlists that will give you a good start. Definitely pay attention to YouTube, what's trending on YouTube, listening just a little bit to popular radio. I don't like to listen to the radio a lot. Sirius XM will give you some good things. Pay attention to the Billboard charts. Then, the hidden gem is to listen to other DJs, whether they're streaming on like Twitch or on the radio station, what they mix in. When you're out doing real life gigs, see what songs are being requested, because that'll give you a clue as to what people want to hear. And then you could get lost on like people's beat source and, Beatport and all that. So all the online sources for that. Bandcamp is a really good gem too. And those are just some ways to kind of pay attention, listen. Of course, when you're hearing songs, Shazam it or make a record of it just to try to curate it. And that'll get you off on a good start and keep going from there.
Do you take time out every week or every month where you're going to sort of have like research time?
Yeah, so there's definitely a lot of research time. Maybe in the past, I might not have spent as much as I should, but as things kind of calm down a little bit now that we're coming out of the pandemic, definitely take some time to research. I have a Sunday night show that I stream that I really try to find a lot of like mid to low tempo songs. So I spend a lot of time during the week researching that. So absolutely researching. I probably need to do more, but I do spend a good amount of time researching.
And where can folks find your streaming shows?
So twitch.tv/Amani Experience. I usually stream Sundays, Mondays, and Wednesdays. One day's talk, one day's a game show, and one day's music. Music is Sunday nights. I love slow jams. So I really get into slow jams, play them for about 3 or 4 hours on Sundays. And so I really try to dig deep, not repeat the same song at least once every 8 or 9 weeks is my goal. And so that's why I spend a lot of my time digging for it lately. Plus, I have in real life gigs. Like I had a club gig last Thursday. So I definitely had to kind of use the resource to see what was popular, what works, and kind of go from there.
And when you're streaming, you said, so Monday's talk. So is Monday sort of like a podcast style thing? All right. And then Wednesday, you said game show. What happens on Wednesdays?
Yeah, so Mondays, like we call it Twitch University, where we all learn about Twitch. We interview different streamers, see what they're doing, what we can learn from them, and I give them updates because that's kind of where we've been the last year and a half. Wednesdays, depending on the Wednesday, like today we'll have the Newlywed Game. Next week we'll have what's called like Twitch Squares, which is like Hollywood Squares but on Twitch. Then we have the dating game we do, and we're creating a new one, which is like an online version of the Masked Singer. I've done Survivor. So just different types of content that we can take from any platform that we're streaming live and first use it to create content outside of the platforms. But second, like I do a lot of corporate events and I do a lot of team building. So I want to try to introduce some unique things for corporations to do. Like if you went to a big corporate meeting, but instead of having like a show, you had actually the executives for your company that were playing Hollywood Squares, that'd be pretty cool. It's just something different like that. So that's what we do in terms of like game show nights on Wednesday.
And music listeners, bear with me here. I'm going to ask one more question about this game show because I'm genuinely curious. So how does Survivor work being streamed on Twitch?
Great question. So I'll give you an example. One of our most highly attended survivors we had, Michael Jackson, Stevie Wonder, Luther Vandross, Whitney Houston, Aretha Franklin, I think it was Madonna. What I'll do is we start off with play songs and videos, live streaming, so people are watching in the chat, commenting from all the artists. We come to a point, maybe the first 15, 20 minutes, we have to vote one of those artists off the island. So whoever gets the least amount of votes will have to leave the island. So say we go through that and like Aretha Franklin, people like no more Aretha. So we put a little X on the screen. She's off. And then we keep going until we get down to the final two and the final one. And so whoever is the final person there is a survivor. There's twists, just like real Survivor. Like I think for that one, we brought in maybe Rick James or Stevie Wonder later. So it's like a late entry or whatever, just kind of how they do in the real TV show, just to spice it up. People get really emotional about the artists they love. And so in the chat, you know, they're going back and forth, but it's all in good fun and everything. So we ran that show for probably a good 16 or 20 weeks. And so like TV, most shows have like their duration. Now we're taking a break from it. So we've introduced some new games like we had for a while. If you're familiar with basketball, NCAA tournament, we had brackets. So we do the best 16 Michael Jackson songs and have them all bracket styles and vote on them and then get down to the final one, final four. Just different things to have some interactive content online, which will keep people in and keep people coming back is the goal.
That's amazing. So did you find your way to this approach to content because you were not able to go out and play club gigs and things like that? Like you needed some avenue to keep the DJ skills moving, to stay in that pool. And then this was a way to do that online, which, I mean, insanely creative and so smart. Like I'm literally going to be gushing about this to everyone I talk to for the rest of the day because I think it's just the best thing since sliced bread.
Yeah, I think it's definitely that is a really important part of it. The goal, like on Twitch, you're trying to grow your channel to expand your reach. And so there were so many DJs at like the peak of the pandemic just DJing sets. So I had to do something for me to first keep me entertained, try to make my streams different while growing, but still having fun content that will allow us to dig and discover new music. There was a song we discovered when doing brackets. It was like, Let Me Be Your Angel. I forget the artist's name, Patrice. I think it was Patrice Russian. Let Me Be Your Angel. And we completely forgot about that song, but we discovered it through the whole process. And it just really helped to keep my channel different. And now it's continuing to evolve. And we just try to keep evolving, keep creating like the version of the Masked Singer. I think it's going to be called Who's That Voice? We're trying to do that online, just continue to add things that people are like, oh, what do you got going on today? Let me see. So that's kind of the goal right there.
I have more questions. Like we're going to hang out here for a second. Okay. This is so cool. Like you're so onto something here. And for anyone who reads the book, you'll understand this thought process a lot better because as you read through the book, you see the interconnectedness of Amani's perspective on business, DJing, music, and how it, and life too, and how it all sort of comes together. So when you're doing the Masked Singer, is it going to be sort of like you see maybe an avatar and then you hear, for example, Whitney singing, and then people have to guess and vote for which singer they think is singing?
So how we have it set up is like just how we're on like streaming now. You can actually set up your stream where you can have a collage of like images, which can be clues in terms of who's singing. So you put up the
Ah.
collage, then we'll see, okay, who's singing. We might let people guess. We'll have a couple celebrity panelists who will kind of share their thoughts on if they can sing, what they did well. And then we'll get all the way through to the end, and then we'll see who we vote off. And I think with this one, we might like have 5 people singing, and we'll just vote them all off to see a final winner per episode. And that's how we'll do it that way. And remember, these ideas are kind of given to me like Survivor. I was given that idea by our viewer. The brackets, I saw one of my colleagues do something similar. I said, let me take that and run. The dating game was my idea. Newlywed Game was another person's idea. Twitch Squares was a viewer's idea. So I'm not creating all this by myself, but I do listen, which is very important. And I said, oh, that might work. That might not work. And then we go for it. So that's kind of the plan for the Masked Singer. And maybe they make a reveal, we vote off. It should be pretty cool. And we've created a nice community on Twitch. And so it's just really to grow and create some different things. People are like, oh, because what we've learned through pandemic is that interactive TV is kind of the future. Like I know Netflix, I forget the name of the show. I think it was the show that they had where you could choose your own adventure, kind of pick how you went. Black Mirror had
Well, they have a couple now. They also
Yes.
did one with Headspace too.
Yes, exactly. And so that's like the future. So if we can do that live where people can interact, then they'll come back, we've found. And that's just the goal right there.
So one more sort of practical question around the Masked Singer streaming. Do you then have to really dig deep and find examples of when these singers were singing someone else's song? Because if you hear Dance with Somebody and Whitney singing it, you know instantly. I mean, you're not going to confuse Whitney for Janet Jackson when you hear Dance with Somebody. So do you then go and find either moments or covers or a cappella parts from concerts and then use those snippets for the singers?
What we'll do is we'll just let, like, there are a lot of people on Twitch that can just do covers. So we'll say, okay, who are you? Like, we'll say it's you, for example, and say you love to sing maybe Ed Sheeran. So I'll say, okay, well, today you're going to sing, Thinking Out Loud, and you're just going to try to sing it, and people try to guess. Next week, maybe you want to do a Charlie Puth song. And then you sing that. And then maybe one week you want to do LL Cool J and you want to rap. So you throw people off. And so it's just, but we see clues that are on the screen, like, okay, who is this? Who is this? Let's see if we can figure out who it is, and then guess. And people have fun in the chat. They're like, oh, that person can sing, or who is that? And then it's just fun. So that's kind of the plan. I think it'll work pretty well. It'll be fun. So yeah.
That is so cool. And we'll put a link to that Twitch channel in the description if you are on YouTube, and in the show notes if you are on audio. Another question for you. Do you ever screen events before you play? Like, do you have like an intake survey or something like that so you can get a feeling for what sort of genres and styles and musics you're going to be spinning that evening?
Yes. What I do is I do send kind of like it's a small little questionnaire. Really, the most important question I've found is the age demographic for who will be in attendance. 'Cause if you know that there's going to be people 30 to 50 there, you know what decades they were pretty much in high school, college. You kind of know what songs they would move them. Then you mix it in and go from there. I'll also on that survey say, what do you want to hear and what do you absolutely do not want to hear? So if they can answer those 3 questions, that gives me a good roadmap. And then I can just kind of use my experience and liberty to kind of go and have some fun.
Can you talk a little bit about, you mentioned this in the book, creating a DJ brand? I think this is applicable for DJs and musicians alike. The 7 ways to market yourself as a DJ, and I'll add in parentheses, or musician.
I think networking is so important. That's number 1, just because I've learned the hard way that you can't really do everything yourself. So you need some help, whether it be other musicians to collaborate with, whether it be some musicians to give you some feedback on your work. So networking is one. And specifically networking, I'm a big believer in terms of joining professional associations. In the musician world, like I'm a member of ASCAP. So that's like your performance rights organization. It could be ASCAP, BMI, CSAC. I forget the Canada one, but those are a good association where you can get education, you can meet people, maybe even get a chance to perform. So that's one. In the music world, DJ is very similar. Like if they're having there's a residency, like a musician has a residency, they say every Friday they're at this place in Venice, California. Well, maybe you offer to open up for them. If they're going to come on at like 9 o'clock, say, okay, I can come on at 8:15, play a 45-minute set, warm up the crowd for you, and then you can take over. Or I can close for you. Once you're done at 10 o'clock to 11:30, I can finish out the night. Same thing in DJ world, an opener, a primetime slot, closer. That's really beneficial.
And can you talk a little bit about that position of being an opener DJ in terms of where you are in your career? Like, is there a point where you're first starting out where you should say, listen, I will come spin 45 minutes for free. You don't have to pay me anything. I'm just show up. Just let me do my thing for 45 minutes. I'll be out of your hair afterwards. And then you can hang out and watch the next DJ spin. Is that something you would recommend for absolute sort of people who are just getting into the game to do? What's the game plan, and then how does that evolve over time?
Absolutely. That's the perfect way to get in, both get practice, network with other DJs. That's what I did. I had a colleague from Scratch Academy where I went to school. He was a little more advanced. He invited me to come and open up for him at this club in Venice. I did a good job, and basically when you open up, you really have to, you can't play any of the hits. Like, you have to play maybe something that's new, throwbacks, but you don't want to play things that people are expecting to hear at prime time. So it is a skill. Opening is very difficult. Some people cannot do it well because they want to play the hits. No, you have to dig a little deeper, play maybe a little obscure, some things that were hot 4 or 5 years ago, something that's new. So you're setting up the opener so the crowd is ready. They're ready when he or she comes on. They're ready to hear the hits. They've heard the throwbacks. They're pumped up. They've got their beverages if they choose to drink. They're ready to go. Now, because of the fact that I did that, the club, they liked me. They said, oh, can you come back on maybe an off night? I opened up for him on a Saturday night. They said, can you come back on a Wednesday? And because we have no one here, we need someone to fill in. So I said, yes, I did that a couple times. They called me in a pinch. I think their DJ was sick one Thursday. So I went on a Thursday and did well, did the whole set. And then what happened is that one of their DJs left. A Friday night DJ left. They said, oh, well, we really like what you're doing. How do you feel about taking over Fridays? So I said, I'd love to. It was my first really kind of official residency. I did that for like 3 or 4 years, every Friday. And that's what happens. Like, once you open up, and then other DJs will call you to open up, and it just kind of grows from there.
And at what point did you bring money into the conversation? Because at a certain point, you're going to ask the club to pay you. At what point was that?
Right when they said, can you come and cover the Wednesday? So I said, okay, what's the fee? What's the rate? Here's what I'm looking for. We came to an agreement. Then when they switched and said Fridays, I said, oh, Fridays is more of a busier time for me. You ask for a little bit of an increase, and you go from there.
And when you made your initial ask for the Wednesday, was it based off of your knowledge of your peers' price point, and then you sort of went under that because it was your first gig and you wanted to be appealing, or did you try and match that to give a feeling of consistency or quality? What was the strategy? What was the thought process?
I tried to match that. I asked them what's the rate for Wednesdays, and they pretty much, it's pretty well known. They had a rate for was it Sunday through Thursday, and then they have a special rate for Friday and Saturday. So they said, this is our rate for Wednesdays. If it's good for you, we'd love to have you. And I said, okay, that works. And then Friday was something different.
So in this case, as opposed to saying, this is what I cost per night, you said, what's your guys' budget? You came at it from a very collaborative standpoint.
Yes, because I was very new in kind of negotiating, and I didn't have much credibility yet. Now it's a little different because I got so many years of experience. I could be like, this is my expectation. Are you able to meet this? If not, I'm not going to be able. But I had to kind of build up a certain amount of experience first before I could have the leverage to say that.
And approximately, what was that window of time when you started to understand or give yourself the value that you know you're worth?
Yeah, know your worth. I love that saying, know your worth, and then add tax. I think I think it took me probably a good year and a half in there, because once I saw that the night was picking up, it was doing well, I said, okay, now I'm doing well, kind of hitting a groove. Let's kind of continue the conversation and discussion, see if we can kind of come to an agreement.
So I cut you off, I think, at about point 3 of the 7 ways to market. Maybe we could pick up the marketing in terms of social media and trying to get the same handle across all sites, which you do have, which is Amani Experience. If you're on video, you can see that AMANI Experience spelled conventionally.
Right down. Where is it?
Indeed. right down there. So what is your advice to people who have read your book, or maybe have come across the teachings of someone like Gary Vaynerchuk, who is all about personal branding, and they read your book and they see, okay, I want to get the same handle across all platforms, but also have it be something that's relevant to me. Now, for example, I wanted to get Dan Spencer. Now, there's this guy who's like 5 years older than me who also plays music, whose name happens to be Dan Spencer. So my entire life, I've never been able to have Dan Spencer. So it's always been about finding something close, something relevant, something that's short, some catchy. What's your advice to someone who's in a position like myself where their name is taken, they can't get their URL, they can't get their handles?
Try to, maybe if you have a middle initial, like it could be danmspencer.com, or maybe even you can flip it and say spencerdan.com, something creative that's easy to remember, or it can just be dans.com. Try to find out what works, what's available, and make a decision. The real Dan Spencer, that's another good one that people use. So those are some options I give. It's important. Mine used to be different, but I was able to change it, about 5 or 6 years ago and continue. So just
Do you mind telling us what it used to be?
Oh, no. It used to be AHR19 because I was a gamer and that was my gamer tag. So I just made it all the same. And so, no, I had to change that because it didn't make sense. So I went to Amani Experience. Of course, a couple of my DJ colleagues kind of recommended I do that. I was able to get the website. That was the name of my business first. And I still had AHR19. And then I switched everything over. And now it's so far so good because I still have like DJ AmRo wasn't available. I think DJ AmRo 1 was. So I said, no, that'll still be my DJ name. Because DJs can have many different names, by the way. But I just went with Amani Experience. It's working. And I got the Twitch handle. Still working on like YouTube because you have to get a certain number of followers before you can change that. So that's work in progress too. But like if a TikTok, I think I got it, even though I don't use it. So I try to kind of get it as soon as I can.
Can you talk about when you're at an event, and maybe I think for this question, further questions, we could sort of, in my mind, define 3 types of events, and maybe you could add on or subtract from those. So the 3 arenas I'm thinking of are club gigs, weddings, and then corporate events. Are there any other large spheres, or does that kind of cover it?
I would also add in virtual events now, especially with the environment. But for the most part, you're right, because a virtual event can be a corporate event. But we can separate those out too, because it takes a different skill set to pull that one off. And it's just a lot of learning. So those would be the 3 or 4 that kind of are the buckets that I work in primarily.
So within those buckets, what is the balance for you, and what's your advice to other DJs out there in terms of walking the line between self-promotion and then not taking the focus off of the event?
With corporate events, you can't really self-promote very much at all because you're really there as a representative of the corporation. With social events, kind of the same thing. Like you're there for the person who's getting married or the birthday party or the celebration. So you have to you got to be careful with your self-promotion there. You might introduce yourself, have cards available. People can follow you on your platforms, but you really have to defer to the client. Now, when it gets to clubs, I mean, it is all about self-promotion. You're there for the club, but you're also there to kind of spread the word about you. So that's a little bit more allowed, a little bit more applicable. You can have your social media handles on like your laptop that's showing. You can kind of talk to people, shout it out when people are there. The virtual environment, streaming with the chat, you can have little reminders in the chat about follow me on social, join my email newsletter, things like that. So those last 2 are a little bit more allowable to self-promote. The first 2, you definitely have to be careful, and just people will find you and they'll ask you, how do I reach you? And you just have to kind of go with that. And if you get an opening, take it, but definitely don't be too aggressive.
Would you also agree that if someone's coming up to you in a wedding or corporate setting and they genuinely want to know who you are, you sort of raised the bar for the qualifier of someone who's interested in you. They've not just like seen your handles, on your laptop or on the banner or whatever. They've actually gone and asked you for it. So it's actually, in terms of like actionable, viable leads, I would imagine that being in those 2 situations, if someone reaches out to you, it's actually a really good thing.
Yeah, you've kind of already passed the tryout, so to speak, or the screening process. So they've seen you work and you didn't even know they were watching you. So you've kind of passed the test, give them your business card. Also, try to get their information because a lot of times you'll give out business cards and you'll never hear from people. So try to get their information. Oh, my name's Amani. How can I reach you? Or is there an email I can just reach out to you? And maybe they'll give it to you or they'll send it to you. Because it's hard. If people ask for your cards, you want to be able to follow up. And sometimes that's where the ball gets dropped.
What about putting like a QR code on cards where you could say, here, scan this. They scan the QR code and it takes them straight to like Facebook Messenger where they shoot you a message.
Yeah, yeah. So that's good. I saw one at a conference a few weeks ago where it was a QR code, and you could sign up for their mailing list, which is the most effective, I think. So mailing list is really good. I think that's a hidden gem that people don't use enough. Or LinkedIn profile too. Those are two really good ones that can really keep you in touch with people. Especially for me, corporate events. A lot of the corporate event planners do live on LinkedIn.
Could you talk a little bit about the value of mailing lists and especially the value for DJs and mailing lists?
Yeah, I find that we as creatives put probably a little bit too much focus on like the social media platforms, whether it be Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, because we need to remember the story of MySpace. I'm not sure if you're old enough to remember
Oh, yeah.
MySpace, but
Oh,
you
yes.
spend all this time growing your list of people, your top 6 friends on MySpace, and then almost overnight it went away.
Mhm.
And back then, you didn't have a way to export your contacts and keep in touch with them. This is why email is so important because if you can do an email newsletter once a month, once every 2 weeks, you have people's emails. You can continue to communicate with them. Even if they don't open up the email, they'll still see the subject title, like Amani, the update from Amani mid-month of July. They'll say, okay, he's still doing things. They might check it, but it just keeps you at the top of mind. And emails, it's been around for a while now. It's not going to go away. It's outlasted almost all of these social media platforms. And now it's kind of built into how we live our life. It's very valuable. And a lot of times people will sign up for a good email newsletter. And I think that we don't use that enough. We depend too much on like Instagram, Facebook, and we need to try to own as much of our audience as we can. And through an email list, you can do that.
And what are your best practices around frequency and type of content within those email lists?
Frequency, I've learned that either twice a month or weekly is good. People will still open it every week. I think so. A good mixture between that. Content should be a little bit of self promotion, as we talked about, some information that people might not find anywhere else. Like for me, once a month, I'll do the top 7 most requested songs from my past month. People love that because, I like this song, I like this song. I'll share interesting videos that I have. I'll share podcast episodes that I've done or podcast episodes that I've discovered that I think people will like. So if you're sharing information along with some things for you, I always share about my book at the end of it. Um, it works well and people will open it and you can keep in touch. Then you can sneak in like, oh, check out my schedule on Twitch. Here's what I'm doing. Here's everything that's going on. I think a combination of all those things on an email newsletter consistently will help.
And what have you found to be the most effective cadence in terms of ordering that type of information? Do you start off with something fun? Do you start off with something promotion-y? What are your best practices there?
I will, on the monthly one, when the one I do once a month, I'll always start off with the top 7 songs. People see that right away. That kind of draws them in. And then I'll kind of go through my schedule and maybe an article. If I'm featured in an article or a podcast at your podcast, I'll do that in like the bi-weekly ones, put that maybe first with like an interesting article I found out about the music industry or hospitality industry second. So I try to keep news up top so people can get something really quickly and they don't skip it. And I try to limit it to 4 to 5 items. So I'm not going to kind of overwhelm people. They can see, okay, A, B, C, D, E, and I'm out. I'll always put a quote, a fun quote at the end of the monthly one because people love some inspiration. And I try to keep it simple and just keep it moving.
Could you describe what you call prime time for our listeners who may be musicians, may be DJs, and just don't understand what that means?
So prime time in the DJ musician world is like, I'll say like 11:45 or midnight to like 1:30 or 2. So it's like the prime time when the most people are in the club. They want to dance. They want to hear the hits. It's like prime time. So most of my sets are 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. So prime time is about 11:45 to about 1:15. That's a good hour and a half where you're just going through hits, keeping people on the dance floor, and just keep the party going, people singing along. Once you get to about 1:15, then people might be a little tired. And so then I like to close the night with some slow jams later on after about 1:30. But that's prime time. So it's the time when people are ready, they've gotten there, the crowd is packed, the club is packed, and it's just go time, so to speak.
What I'm interested in understanding is the difference of the dynamics of prime time, both how you get into it and how you sustain it across our four buckets. So how does prime time work in clubs versus weddings versus corporate events versus virtual?
Clubs will be what we just talked about, like good, like 11:45 to about 1:15. Just play the hits, play the old primetime classic hits, play the new songs that people want to hear, and just run through all those, and just keep the people on the dance floor. Corporate event, primetime would be, depending on what kind of events it is, if there's like a big dinner, once dinner is done and people are ready to unwind, that's prime time. If it's like a celebration or like a grand opening, primetime could be the entire event. It just could be the entire event. It really depends on that. For a wedding, once the first dance is over, the meal is happened, and maybe, the bride and groom have finished their meal and they're ready to get going, that's prime time. So you gotta watch, see what's going on, get the dance floor, because then you will have to take a break. Maybe they cut the cake, they have the garter toss, all sorts of things. So you stop it, and then you start it again, got to rebuild the dance floor. That is prime time for those events. So it just really depends, but that's a good barometer right there.
And for virtual?
Yeah, virtual is interesting. Like, it depends. So on Twitch, there are things where, say, if I'm hosting a room and I have like 60 people in my room, 60 people commenting, and we're kind of building up the momentum, and the crowd is continuing to grow. But then on Twitch, it's called a raid. So someone will bring all the viewers from their channel over to your channel. So maybe it'll go from 60 people to 110. And so then, you want people to stay in your channel. So you might have to amp it up a little bit quickly. So that could be considered kind of prime time then, because you want to keep the people there. So yeah, virtual is a little interesting. It just really depends. A lot of times virtual at the beginning of events, when you're doing a corporate virtual event, like that's prime time, because people are logging on, and we have Zoom fatigue. So you want to capture their attention and say, whoa, what's going on here? This is like a lot's going on. So that would be like prime time right away. Then you have like the event. Then there's a break, prime time again. So that's like more staggered, but right away for hybrid kind of corporate events too.
So with these different prime times and these different ways of approaching it, you talk in the book about how to not fumble the ball, essentially, transitioning into those prime time events. And I think if we couple that with the understanding, like you just said, you have to watch the bridal party. You have to watch the dance floor. At corporate events, you need to watch, you need to feel the room out. There's a lot more to being a DJ than just picking the next song. Even if we take the music part out of it, the amount of, you're basically like an anthropologist who's also playing music. You're just sitting there like observing groups of people and cultural dynamics and then reacting to those. Can you talk a little bit about how you started to develop that? Obviously you came from business, so you'd already started to cultivate that sense of things. But can you talk about any exercises you did, or was it just a matter of time and experience?
Yeah, time and experience really dominate this one. Reading the room, that's kind of what we call it. It's never the same. It's almost impossible to have the same people in the same mood in the same place at the same time. So there's always different dynamics. So reading a room is one of the hardest things to do as a DJ, because what worked last week might not work this week. What worked 2 years ago could work next week. It just depends. So you really have to be able to read a room, understand what song combinations can work and kind of activate people and bring them out and get them excited. Song combinations that worked 3 years ago might not work anymore. So you really have to practice, trial and error. You learn by, and we don't say mistakes, but only gifts. But you learn by kind of maybe fumbling along and it didn't work this time. Maybe you try to have a combination of going from, a Michael Jackson song to Jay-Z to Drake and then back to Beyonce, and maybe the Beyonce song didn't hit too hard. Well, maybe you switch up the order next time and do something differently. But don't give up. Just keep trying, see what works, and eventually you'll kind of you'll kind of see a pattern, what works, and then sprinkling something for you. We like to say in the DJ world, I play 3 songs for you and I play 1 song for me. So you do that 3-1 pattern, and a lot of times the song you're playing for you is also people love it too. So that'll keep you sane, but then that'll kind of keep you kind of looking around, seeing what's working. You see people bobbing their head and you just kind of follow that pathway.
Could you, without sort of selling all your secrets, could you maybe give us an example of one song cadence? I forget the exact term you used. What was
Combination?
Yeah, okay. One song combination that you would use in prime time, like now, to get people going.
Okay, so now let's look here. One that works really well in the clubs, like Too Short, Blow the Whistle. That's a classic song. Jay-Z, I Just Want to Give It to You is another classic song. So you can
you'd put those back to back.
You put those back to back, and then you'd sneak in like whatever's a popular Drake song in the kind of same BPM, because Drake will hit really well. And then you might be able to put like a E40 in there. Tyga, I'm thinking about hip hop bass. Do that. And that gives you 4. And then what you could do is to get there, say if you're playing something a little bit more up tempo, say you're playing like around 115, you
BPM.
could drop BPM, BPM. You could drop in maybe like Jackson 5, I Want You Back.
Yeah.
So you hit a throwback that brings the BPM down. Then you go to Jay-Z, I Just Want to Love You. Then maybe like I'm trying to think of a popular Drake song, like Mia, MIA for Drake, that's kind of similar BPM. Drop that in. So you have something kind of current. It's 2017, 18. And then you go from there. You can play a little Pop Smoke, mix that in there. Then you go to Blow the Whistle. That keeps you going along. And then because what's popular really right now is like Afro beats is popular, Latin music. So you could play like Baila, Baila, Baila by Ozuna. That's pretty current, but not current, a couple years old. Then you can mix in like maybe Wayne Wonder, No Letting Go. So you're crossing many different genres, but people are like feeling the beat. You're also kind of increasing the speed because people like to move faster. And then you can sneak in Usher, Yeah, from there. Like you do a little Nicki Minaj, Truffle Butter, like just different songs here, just kind of hit, boom, 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 and just keep building. By now you're up to about 105. You could bring in some Nelly, Hot in Here, and just kind of work your way through that, see what works. Some of them might hit, some of them might not, and adjust on the fly.
2 questions off of that. Number one, I think it might be really interesting for people to understand that the amount of actual musical work that needs to be done by a good DJ is significant. Like you actually are working on musical skills. Because to be able to beat match, not only matching keys sometimes, but just matching BPM, speeds, feelings, meters, all that kind of stuff requires a prerequisite of knowledge and understanding of the music on a technical basis that you wouldn't have just waking up in the morning if you'd never looked at music. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Definitely. I think what we call, so beats per minute is how many, times a song has a beat per minute. And the songs I was pretty much talking you through are from 96 beats per minute to about 107. So you need to know that first. Then you have to know, okay, how long is the intro? How long is the chorus? How long is the bridge? How long is the outro? Because generally speaking, a rule is no vocals over vocals. So I don't want to bring in Blow the Whistle over Jay-Z and have both of the people talking. That's a cardinal sin. You don't want that. So no vocals over vocals. So you need to know how long is the intro for Jay-Z versus how long is the chorus for Blow the Whistle. So say, for example, the intro for Jay-Z is 4 bars. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 times. The bridge, one of the bridges for Blow the Whistle is most of the courses are 4 bars, and then it gets to 8 bar later on. So you want to, like Tetris, match them up. So 4 bar intro over a 4 bar chorus, you want to start at the right time. So you need to know either by memory or making markers in your DJ system, your technology, how to match it up so you drop the song at the right time and you go. This is all at the same time when you're trying to figure out what song am I trying to be playing 5 or 6 songs down the road. All that. In addition, you have to make sure you're making announcements for the bar, the people, all that. You have to make sure the people, you're quadruple tasking as you're doing this. Plus, God forbid there are any technology issues. You want to make sure the tech's up. You don't have good thing if you're not running lights yourself, all that. but it's a lot going on. And then you're just trying to figure out, okay, what time is it? Do I have enough time to play this song? What can I get here? If you're trying to get to like 1:15, what are you trying to do? This is my thought process. And you need to make sure the dance floor is packed, because if it's packed, the plan we just talked about, maybe we need to change it up and do something different. Maybe you got to drop it down to a lower BPM and play something else. Don't forget, people are always coming around making requests. They're making requests like, can you play this song? Can you play this song? We're about to leave. Can you play my song? And so it's a lot going on. Preparation really helps. Mapping out a song. When I say mapping out a song, that means within every song you have, make sure you notate how long the intro is, where the choruses are, how long they are, how long the outro is. And that will help you, because if you're scrambling and say you got to move quick, you need to have some visual cues. I know I do. Visual cues to say, okay, I see the choruses coming up. I need to line this song up, and then beat match. We didn't even talk about that. Like, if you are playing a song that's a little older, that's not quantized. And when I say quantized, that means it's on the grid. It's kind of like a lot of the newer songs are quantized, which means they just stay the same tempo. If you do the older music, rock, R&B from back in the day, live drumming, it speeds up, it slows down, it speeds up. So you need to consistently making adjustments as you're blending the song in. There's a lot going on. I mean, I could keep talking, but that's a lot right there.
Can you talk a little bit about do you ever do any scratching or anything like that?
I do a little bit of scratching here and there. I'm not what's considered a turntablist, but I can definitely do like, baby scratch, 1-click flare, 2-click flare, transformer, some of them. I don't do a lot of them out in public yet. I'm still kind of a little bit self-conscious.
Okay, so this is still in the works.
Well, yeah, like I've known how to do it for years. It's just that I prefer to really make sure I have a really smooth blend, nice blend, but I can scratch and do things. I just don't do them as often as maybe I should, but I'm working on that.
So can you talk a little bit about the rhythm work that needs to go in to be able to do that well? Because if someone doesn't have a sense of rhythm, and I don't know if you've ever had the misfortune of hearing a DJ who doesn't have a good sense of rhythm try to scratch, I certainly have. It is memorable in the sense that it like most definitely does not work. So can you talk a little bit about the steps that DJs need to take? Like, do you guys work with a metronome? Are you like clapping to songs? What are you doing rhythmically to get yourself right?
So for scratching, you generally want to start off like quarter notes, like 1, 2, 3, 4, like scratch, scratch, scratch. And then maybe you can break it up to like eighth notes, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Just do that with just an individual scratch track. Then you might bring in like an instrumental. So say you have an instrumental, one of my favorite ones to use is like Friends by Houdini. It's about 95 BPM. So then you try to scratch along to that song, like quarter notes, and 8 notes. Then you might try to do like, transformer, like 1, 2, 3, 4, bring it back, 2, 3, 4, and do that. And then if you can speed it up and still do it well, do it in eighth notes, 16 notes. It's really fast, but that's good. And then, but you always have to be nodding your head, kind of, and then just kind of moving around, but keep that beat going. It takes a lot of practice. And really, if you're not comfortable, just keep it simple. Like it's like adding spice to a meal. Like you don't need to scratch all the way through the song or whatever. Most people don't really like it for hearing music, but there's a time and place for it. So kind of sprinkle in like spices when you're preparing a meal. I find that works best for me, and the best DJs I know can scratch and do things, but they kind of surprise you with it, and then they go back to the song and they kind of do that. Then the other turntablists who are amazing that can just scratch and do all sorts of tricks and things. And that's good too. So it just depends on what your audience wants, and don't overdo it, would be my advice.
When you're talking about going through these cadences of songs or these combos of songs, when you're deciding to switch from one song to a next, I imagine there's several different sort of inputs for making that decision. So it's like, are you watching what's happening on the dance floor, plus also looking at your visual cues and then sort of doing the mental math of where you can fit the puzzle pieces together to try and create that fabric?
Yeah, you're trying to tie songs together. So you look at the choruses. Do I mix in and out in the first chorus? That's kind of quick mixing. Do I let it kind of breathe a little bit, especially if you see the audience is feeling it and they're singing along and people are coming to the dance floor quickly? Then you want to let that song breathe. Maybe even you let it go to the third chorus. Generally speaking, I try to get to at least the second chorus and then C. If a song is not doing well, or people are leaving the dance floor, maybe you need to mix out after the first chorus. So just kind of looking at that, deciding where you want to go. But if there's a part later in the song that people love, then you might want to let it breathe. So, for example, I do a combination sometimes. I'm telling you all my tricks. I do a combination. I do a combination sometimes where we'll have like Biggie Smalls, Juicy, and then I'll bring in "Killing Me Softly" by the Fugees. And if you remember this song, at the end is the acapella part where Lauryn Hill is like la 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 la. She's singing that part, and I learned through practice that a lot of people love to sing along to that part, but that's like the third chorus. That's like a really far.
You got to go through the whole
you gotta
song
go
to
through
get
the
there.
whole song.
Yeah.
But if people are feeling it, and I've seen it many times, once you get to that part, people are singing along. So one of my favorite things to do as a DJ is if you cut the volume, but people are singing along, I get goosebumps, and that's why I do what I do. And that's a good combination where I might let a song breathe, especially if it's later in the night. People are nice and warm. Gives me a little break to just kind of chill. Just not a break, 2 minutes, but still to let the song breathe. Then you pop that on, people are singing along, and then you just kind of keep it going and go to another song from there. But that's kind of my philosophy on that, and it's worked well for me so far.
One of the examples you illustrate in the book I think you said it was after Christmas. And you start spinning, you're doing sort of hits mixed with a couple of Christmas throwbacks, and then you decide to put on Mariah Carey, All I Want for Christmas. And can you maybe describe what happens when you put this song on?
Yeah, this was, what was it? It was right after Thanksgiving. I was in one of my normal clubs, and we're playing hits after hits. It's about midnight, and you see I'm a big Mariah fan. I think she's right there. And so I'm thinking, I'm like, okay, I'm going to drop this song because it, as you saw this year, it went to number one again on the charts. It's like an 18-year-old song. I said, okay, I'm going to drop All I Want for Christmas Is You. So we kind of coming out of a song. I kind of pause really quickly. It's quiet. And then you drop it in. So you hear the piano coming in first, and people are like, oh, because it's right after Thanksgiving. So people are in the Christmas spirit. And then, she starts singing, and the whole club stops what they're doing, starts singing along to the entire song for all 3 minutes and 12 seconds of it. I got goosebumps for that. I think this was back when Cardi B and Kodak Black was extremely popular. And the BPMs kind of matched pretty well. So I was able to match it up, and I went through the whole song and then dropped Cardi B's Kodak Black after that one. Or Kodak Yellow, I think the name of the song is. And it went off, and it was an amazing experience and something I'll never forget.
I think it might be Kodak Yellow,
Yeah,
but
Kodak
I'm sure we will be corrected in the YouTube comments.
Yes.
Hey, another question for you. Can you talk a little bit about going to DJ school and why that's a thing? And, a lot of times with musicians, we have this conversation as well. It's that the school doesn't necessarily make or break you, but it can provide you with a foundation that can, if you have the work ethic, such as yourself, really, really help boost a career.
Yeah. That was Scratch Academy. I went, one of my best friends in life actually went the semester before me. And he said, I know you're DJing, but if you go to the school, I think it'll help you become a better DJ. And I think that's an important lesson, is that you need to be able to be open to feedback from people who you trust and have your best interest in mind. And so I trust him with my life. So I said, okay, I'll go check it out. Went to the school. It was started by Jam Master Jay at Run DMC in New York. Unfortunately, 6 months after he started school in New York, he was murdered. But they continued the school going. It came out to LA. I went to the LA campus, and I went through the whole program. It's about a year-long program. I'd say it's compared to getting like your master's in DJing. And you have to get a certain score to pass. They take you through different exercises each semester. The last semester, you have to do 6 performances, and you have to get 320 out of 400 for those performances. I think I got like a 318 out of 420, so I didn't pass. And that was a turning point, because I had to make a decision. Am I really in for this DJ life, or do I kind of want to take my ball and go home? And, I stuck with it. I had to retake the final class. It's completely objective, so there are no guarantees that you will pass it just because you take it 2 times, because you're doing performances each time. And many, many, many people fail that class consistently. But I went through the class, got one of the highest scores ever. And that was really the springboard for me kind of really starting to do better in DJing, building a strong foundation, as you mentioned. I met some close friends there that I'm still close friends with now. And even my instructors there, not one of them became my piano instructor and remix partner. So it's been that was a life-changing experience. One of the top 5 moments was graduating, and it just really changed the trajectory of my professional career as well as personally. So I really look back upon that time fondly, and it really helped me become a stronger DJ quickly.
So was the piano instruction separate from school, or was that part of school?
That was after, because I wanted to do remixes. I love doing remixes. And it's funny because I went back to Scratch Academy for music production school, and I went through that program. And I have a good friend, Teresana. She's an amazing singer. So I wanted her to sing on my final project. So I send her my beats or whatever with the music underneath it. And she's like, this is not good. Like, I can't sing over this. The harmony, it just doesn't fit. It doesn't work. You need to take some music theory so you can understand what works and what doesn't work. Once again, I had to be open to feedback because that would hurt, and she's rather direct in her communication style. So the way she shared it with me probably was a little bit tough, but I love her. So I listened, and then I enlisted the help of one of my colleagues at Scratch, V-Fresh, he's an amazing DJ, but just a talented musician. I said, I'm looking for someone who can teach me some music theory. He said, oh, I can teach you. We can do lessons outside. So ever since then, like today's Wednesday, I have a music class in about 3 hours with him. We do piano and remixes, and that's kind of how that came to be. But it has helped me out so much. And playing the piano will help your ears with mixing. It can help your scratching, just rhythms. So the piano is an extremely valuable instrument. I love it. And that's kind of how that came to be.
There's no shame in having a side hustle. And there's like literally, everyone has their purpose in life, but everyone also needs to eat food, right? Can you talk a little bit about how you bring side hustles into your sphere of DJing?
I grew up working in hotels. I worked for Marriott Hotels for almost 20 years. I grew up in hotels. I grew up in Marriott, amazing company. My job was eliminated 3 times in like the last 4 years I was with Marriott, just with the economy and with what was going on. And it was at that time that I learned that it's really important, I feel, for you to diversify your income streams. I don't think you should put all your eggs in one basket because things can happen. Unfortunately, the pandemic showed us this, where people get furloughed, people get laid off. And if you're dependent on one source of revenue for all of your income, that's very dangerous. And I think the statistic is like the average millionaire has 7 streams of income. And I learned the hard way. So I think side hustles are a requirement in the day and age we're at now, because it's just very difficult to stay ahead with just one job. Now, some people can do it, and I'm jealous of them because I couldn't do that. So I think that a side hustle, like for DJing, you can DJ, but a lot of DJs will teach people how to DJ. They'll produce. They will do other things. They have a side job, photography or something. Like for me, I do some writing. I am a professor, and I'm a DJ and author. So those are like 4 kind of different streams of income that I work on. I'm working on 3 others, but then you have to balance it out because you don't want to spread yourself too thin either. I just think that nowadays, 2021, 2022, like side hustles are a requirement, especially if you're a creative, because you don't want to depend 100% on your main source of creativity for your income, because that will lead to burnout.
Can you talk a little bit about your side hustle with Uber?
Uber. So I remember, let me think here. If I had three. So I think Uber, I think I started Uber in like 2013 or 2014. Uber, back then they pay you more, first of all, and they had, it was just easier to get revenue, but I had to do something because I had left Marriott. So I was trying to build up the income. I hadn't replaced the income yet. So I would drive Uber around, especially after I was at a club, and then I would pick up people who were in the same club that I was in, and they'd be like, okay, we're going home. And I talk to them, how was your night? What'd you think? What'd you think about the music? Was the DJ? And they give feedback. And then at the end, I'm like, I was the DJ in the club tonight when you were there. And they were like, really? Oh, that is you. That is your shirt or whatever. And so it's a good way to get feedback. It's just a really fun time period in my life, just to get feedback and to see people, and also to investigate and to learn how a popular startup company operates, how they treat their people, their communication. So it's good research too. But that was a fun period, just Ubering, and you see some crazy things, and It's just crazy.
When I was reading your book, it struck me that it's such a smart thing, because if you're looking at your life and you want to monetize your time somehow, which essentially is what a side hustle is, right? You're trying to monetize your time somehow. You are going to be driving home from the club. So why not make some more money while you're driving home? You know people, because you're there to the end. You know people are also going to be there to the end. You know those people need a way home. Like, why not? And I think from an entrepreneurial perspective, it's such a gem of an example, because it's like, okay, what are you doing now? And what's one thing you do during your day that you could monetize? And I think that's just such an incredible example.
Yeah, thank you. I would try. It was funny because when I started, they didn't have the capability where you could put in where you were going, so you could try to pick up people on the way. That came along later. So a lot of times I have to risk it. Going there, if I'm coming, say, from LAX area, and I'm picking up someone, and I try to time it where if they're going downtown, that's taking me away from where I'm going. So I had to be careful. But then going home, I could take people anywhere and go home. So I would try to set up the geographic destination to go by LAX, so I could just take people. It's on my ride home, so I'm going there anyways. And that worked out frequently. Only one time, I had to take someone from the club I was at to a block away from my house. It was perfect. But that only happened one time. The other times it was all random places. But yeah, so yeah.
Amani, can you talk a little bit about what you have coming up? What are you working on now?
Now I'm just continuing, as we discussed earlier, just the different streams on Twitch, whether it be Wednesdays, Sundays, or Mondays. I'm starting to do more corporate events in the club events. And we talked about the first book. I'm kind of working on the second book also. And those are kind of the projects I have kind of coming up right now, and continue to work on remixes, releasing remixes every 2 to 3 weeks. Yeah, that's kind of what's on my list right now.
Is there anything you can tell us about the second book?
So the second book is about why there are no longer any Black R&B groups on the Billboard Top 20 charts since about 2004. So it's been an interesting evolution. We examine the history starting in the 50s, all the top R&B, Black R&B groups from the 50s all the way to 2000. Really, it kind of fell off when 112, Jagged Edge, Destiny's Child, that was kind of the last one. Every once in a while, you'll hear a random group pop on there, but to the levels of like a Boyz II Men, Isley Brothers, Cameo, 112, Jagged Edge, SWV, TLC, like it has never reached those levels since the 90s. And so I want to talk about why it happened, what happened, and what do we think is going to happen in the future.
So is a little bit of the history then in the 2000s, is that like where NSYNC and Backstreet Boys start to hit and it becomes the sort of white male pop group thing? And then after that, you have then the British thing with like One Direction. And then that transitions into like the K-pop groups.
Yeah, so K-pop is definitely now. You have the British invasion, NSYNC and Backstreet Boys. But even when NSYNC and Backstreet Boys were big, late 90s, early 2000s, there was still like Black R&B groups on the chart. What we really found so far is that record companies made a choice. They had to choose between Black R&B groups or really like hip hop. Hip hop is more singular, less expensive, easier to produce, and just easier for the record companies to kind of wrangle groups members and all that. It's more complex. Just with songwriting and signing over songwriting rights, it's just more simple and direct with hip hop. I'm trying to figure out why couldn't they just choose both? But from what the research I've seen and looking at the trends, they chose hip hop. In addition, right around 2002, 2003, like we were coming off of Napster. So you had the record industry was going through a massive transformation. They lost so much money. They reached like the low point in like 2006 or 7, where they were sitting, like record companies were sitting like fat and happy when they were charging us $16, $17 per CD and having a huge profit margin. Then Napster comes. And then in addition to Napster, then they had the whole little leaks. Leaks would happen a lot. You could go on to like Pirate Bay, find albums and all sorts. So the record companies went through a massive transformation. So they were like losing money. They couldn't spend a lot of money. So if they can't spend a lot of money, they can't support like that. Also, record stores went away. They used to have record stores in your cities that weren't like the big boxes, like the Best Buys, the Walmarts. There used to be independent record stores in the cities, which is where a lot of the Black R&B groups would get see their fans, get known, visit. So you look at all these combination of factors and you can see, oh, I could see what could happen. And then it just has not come back yet. And so we're trying to figure out what will happen. But I'm really passionate about it because I love Black R&B groups. I grew up with them. New Edition is one of my favorite groups ever. And it just went away. And what happened?
Well, cannot wait. You are more than welcome to come back on and chat some more about this when that book comes out. That sounds like a really cool thing for us to get into.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you.
Absolutely. I got a couple questions for you that are not directly about the book, maybe indirectly. You talk in the book about self-care and about performance. Maybe we could talk a little bit about your best practices for optimal DJ performance is, because you're living, as a DJ, you're living a lifestyle that is sometimes pushing later into the night than a working musician, because working musician, yeah, typically you wrap things up by 1 at the very latest, but you're going till 2, sometimes not getting home till 3. And then of course you need to sleep, and then the sun's up, and then circadian rhythms and all sorts of crazy stuff. So what is your threshold of sleep where below that threshold you're going to see an impact in your performance?
I try to get 6 hours of sleep on the nights where I'll DJ and get home at 3. If I can get to 9 or 10 o'clock after that, that's good. It's hard for me to sleep. I don't sleep very well. So the threshold will be like 5 or 6 hours, and maybe take a nap during the day. I try to hydrate as best as I can. I don't drink when I'm DJing. That just sets me up for failure personally. So I try to just don't do that. Maybe have a ginger ale or a cranberry juice. And then really self-care is just try to get consistent massages, try to do some things where you can unwind. Like I like to play video games here and there. I like to read a lot. Reading is a big part of my self-care, very therapeutic for me. And those are just some things I do for self-care, because it can be, the DJ world can be it does have lots of potholes. And so just try to navigate through that and stay as clear and as focused as I can. And that's what's worked for me. I do need to continue to work on sleeping better and just maximizing that. That's a area of opportunity for me, but that's kind of where I'm kind of working at so far.
Have you ever tried using mindfulness or meditation to impact creativity or performance?
Not yet. A lot of my guests on my podcast mentioned that as one of the biggest things that they've added to their routine in the past year or so that's been beneficial. So I'm working on that. I need to develop better patience to see an impact, I would say.
When you're DJing, you're standing up for like 4 to 5 hours at a time. And anyone who's worked any sort of job, like if you've worked at McDonald's or Panera, any sort of food industry job, you've been on your feet for 5 to 6 hours. And in that case, you're walking too, but it's a lot of work and it does take a toll on muscle groups. It gets tight. Do you ever do any exercise to help your performance? And if so, what does that look like?
So pre-pandemic, I would play soccer 2 or 3 days a week, which is good exercise. And then we couldn't do that. So I got a Peloton. So Peloton helps out tremendously, kind of working out, doing that. In my home studio, I have a nice mat that I'll stand on when I'm live streaming. So that helps out too. I do need to add more stretching to my routine. But so now the plan is moving forward, like I'll play soccer like 1 day a week. I'll do the Peloton 2 days a week. And that'll help me with exercise to kind of keep me clear. Of course, I'll go on daily walks 2 or 3 times a day because I have a dog. So between all that exercise, that helps me. And just trying to eat well and kind of time my meals properly, eat more smoothies. That also will help. So I'm really trying to do a holistic approach as I move forward.
Do you define yourself as a DJ? A person who spins music, or something else?
Definitely the core. What I do is I'm a DJ at heart. So, I spin music, I rock parties, I, curate different musical experiences. And that's what I do, whether it be through streaming, through playing games, through a club, corporate event. I'm a musical curator, curating different experiences through music.
I'm asking more about your actual sense of self. Like, for example, when I was in university, you asked me how I define myself. I would say I am a musician. Not I'm a human being.
Mhm.
Not I'm a carbon-based organism. I would say I am a musician. I was practicing 12 hours a day. It was just like that was how I defined myself. So at this point in your career, are you still defining yourself as a DJ? Are you defining yourself as a human being who does DJ stuff? Or are you defining yourself as something else?
I'd say I'm a DJ. Yeah, I agree
Cool.
with that. Mhm.
When we look at practicing, you sort of talked about how your practice is research. The practice is the experience of going out there and doing gigs, going out and doing shows. Is there any practice that you did back in the day or that you continue to do now to keep skills fresh or try and push boundaries within your sphere of excellence in DJing?
The one aspect of practice that I spend most of my time doing now is I'm really working on live blends. And so live blends will be dropping an instrumental down and doing an acapella version over an instrumental and adding that to my sets. And so that's
Ooh.
something that I've been practicing a lot lately, trying to find the right acapellas that have the high enough quality, different songs that I can blend in. So I've got a good set of maybe like 12 or 13 I can add into sets that I really like to do. I'm just trying to add to that. That's the biggest practice that I'll do for DJing. And I do try to practice my piano 3 or 4 times a week. But the DJing practice, the main thing I'm doing now is the acapellas and live blends.
So the live blend, you're not like creating a remix beforehand. You're actually taking a cappella on one, track on two, and then because all right, and just to break this down for people so they understand how difficult this is. Okay, so when you have the track, if you think about it, if you imagine no one's singing over it, it's all the instruments, it's the drums, bass, guitar, synths, piano, whatever. And then the a cappella is the vocal or the singing part isolated away from all that other information.
Yes.
So if you thought beat matching was a difficult prospect, you now do not have a steady indicator available for beats such as drums, which is what you would start to do. You can't like listen to kick drum one, listen to kick drum two, get them to groove. You have to sort of do this metadata computation in your brain to feel where the pulses are in the a cappella and then match those pulses up to the instrumental, and you're doing this live.
Yeah. Like two of my favorites to do would be you can take, and I loop this. So I'll take the first 8 bars of I Can't Go For That Hall & Oates, and then I'll drop in Pink, There You Go. And they fit very well together. And you just have to, you set it up, you drop the I Can't Go For That, and then you find the one of Pink, like the acapella, and just drop that on the one, bring it up. But you have to continue to adjust it because it'll fall on and off. It's not perfectly quantized, the Pink one. So you do that, but it does sound good. It does sound good. So when it sounds good, it sounds good. And then my other favorite one is we'll have Art of Noise, Moments of Love. And I'll do that one with Mariah Carey, We Belong Together. And that one sounds good too. You just do that live and you just kind of let it go. And people sometimes, many times people think, oh, that's a nice remix. I'm like, no. This is a live blend right here. So
No, sir. No, sir.
Yes. And then another one that is my favorite, I love doing, is you take Cassie, Me and You, and you can do that one with Justin Bieber, Love Yourself. And so I love both those songs. It's about 100 BPMs. You can drop those in. It sounds so good together. So I'm just trying to build that kind of catalog more and more, trying to always acquire acapellas. It takes work, but I love it. And I love to add it into sets. You know, you reminded me, I didn't do that the past Thursday I was at the club. So I need to do that the next time I'm there. But it's fun. People appreciate it. You sneak it in, sneak it out, and it works.
Maybe if you don't mind, I'll take 30 seconds and just break down quantizing, because we've mentioned it a couple times and I don't think we gave it a definition before. So sorry to everyone who's been hearing that word and has not quite understood it. But quantizing is essentially when you, with a computer, you mathematically and precisely separate and define where all the different musical elements are going to be to create a completely precise and even performance across the entire song. You can get something similar to that if you have people listening to a click track. So sometimes we were talking about BPM. Sometimes you'll just hear like a You'll hear that in your ear, and then you can play along with that. That'll also get you a similar result with a little bit more of a human feel in it sometimes, depending on the musician. And then what Amani was talking about before is the difficulty of matching pre-quantized music to quantized music is like if you listen to, like, let's say Earth, Wind and Fire, September, and you can throw it into software where it'll show you the actual BPM, and you'll see the BPM fluctuate throughout the song because as the drummer gets excited or as the band gets excited, they speed up just a little bit. As they get back into the verse, they relax just a little bit. And it's the proposition of matching something that's computer perfect to sort of human whatever is very difficult. And that really is, I think, maybe a summary of the difficulty of the quantization.
Excellent summary. Thank you.
Can you talk a little bit about performance anxiety? Has performance anxiety ever impacted your performance or threatened to impact your performance?
Definitely, yes. I think performance anxiety combined with like imposter syndrome is really what's kind of affected me because, I've DJed at some pretty big clubs and some pretty big events. And a lot of times within your mindset will creep in, who am I to be here where there's tons of others DJs who are better than me that could be doing this? Same thing with writing a book. Like, who am I to write a book when there are better DJs out there that can write a book? But really, I'm here for a purpose. Like, they picked me to DJ this event, and they picked me to write this book, or I picked me. And so that's kind of the performance anxiety. I still get some butterflies. Even when I live stream, I'll get some butterflies, especially when I'm performing at a new venue. Weddings really kind of stress me out because it's such an emotional roller coaster for all parties involved. But you just kind of fight through it. You realize that, the primary problem with performance anxiety is really fear. And so if you can get through fear, false evidence appearing real, you realize that once you get through the fear and the performance anxiety, there's nothing there. Like, it was really nothing to be worried about at all. You have the skills. You're here for a reason. You can do this. And that's how I combat it. So I don't ignore it. I mean, it's there. I get butterflies. I get nervous. But I do realize that in 2 hours, you will have forgotten about it and you'll still be here. So that's kind of what I do to work through that.
What would your recommendation be for a DJ who's getting real nervous and maybe it's impacting their performance? They're getting in a state of anxiety. What are a couple of best practices in terms of combating fear that you've found to be applicable?
Smile when you're playing your music, smile during your sets. Go back to that, play 3 songs for them, 1 song for you. Maybe you need to play 2 songs for you, especially in the beginning. Like, if you play a couple songs that you love in the beginning of your set, that will definitely calm you down, get you nice and warm and just, less stressed out. Drink some water. Really, I love to just tell people, just play a song that you like and sing along with it. And that can go a long way because music has special powers. And then just write down, even in your phone, how you feel after you finish the set. Most of the time, you're going to feel extremely positive. You're going to be on a high. So you can say, okay, I just finished my set. I'm so thrilled. The crowd had an amazing reaction when I played this Whitney Houston song or I played that new Drake song. The crowd went off. Write that down. So then when you begin your next set and you're nervous, pull up your notes on your phone, read that. You're like, it's going to be okay. And then you put on a song you love and you should be off and running pretty well.
When you say music has special powers, could you talk a little bit about that?
Especially here in the United States, it's a very divided country. But the one thing that brings people together that really discriminates against no one is music. And so music can break barriers. It can bring people together from different backgrounds. Music is healing, and it is guiding people through this pandemic. The most common word of feedback you'll see from viewers who are watching all of us DJ streaming on Twitch during the pandemic is that, you all saved me by playing music and by just keeping me occupied with music and exposing new music. You saved me. And, that's mental health is nothing to joke about. Mm-hmm. And we had many, many people who were suffering from like mental health issues. Now, during the pandemic, it was even more enhanced. And so music just calms people down, takes people to another place, brings people together. It has an amazing power over us all. That's why I say it's very powerful.
Well, Amani, I think we should maybe call it there. Is there anything else? Is there anything else you'd like to mention or talk about, or shall we wrap this up?
I mean, I think we've covered a lot. I really appreciate all the good questions. It's funny. I'm in school too. I teach. I'm also school. I'm going to Berkeley College of Music. So this has just been a really good review of where we've been, what I'm doing, and kind of what's the future. So I appreciate the time and energy you spent in this interview.
Oh, fantastic. Well, ladies and gentlemen, Amani Roberts, aka DJ AmRo, his new book, DJs Mean Business, is out everywhere books are sold, and you can find Amani on all your social media platforms at Amani Experience. Amani, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Awesome. Thank you very much for having me.